edifice is just crumbling, right? And like this storefront hasn't been open. It's been vacant for the last 3 years at least. It used to be a hardware store. The apartment on the top floor, it's been vacant for like 4 or 5 years. In that one, they're doing a bunch of illegal construction. Department of Buildings came in, found the workers working there, and the workers went out the back. They all fled. You know, people were breaking in, staying there, they didn't know who. The worst part of it too was that they removed the fire stopping and the false ceiling that ran above, next door. The problem with these vacant units is they just can be incredibly dangerous and nobody knows what's inside.
But since we live in New York, all the prices are spiked up. The second lady just told me right now that yours.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As the city grapples with a growing affordability crisis, more than 88,000 rent-stabilized apartments were vacant across the 5 boroughs last year.
Nobody's buzzer works. Hasn't worked for years. There's been a perpetual problem with this door. There's been a violation placed on it every year, and it disappears, and it comes back, and it disappears. Yeah. And yeah, what's that? We're trying to pass some laws to make it easier to inspect the vacant units in buildings like this, so that you're not living next to like a fire trap, etc.
This is not the management company anymore. You call them, they'll tell you they don't manage it. So, this is one of the buildings that we've been working with for several years to help get repairs and services. There are currently only 3 occupied apartments of the 6. The landlord hasn't rented out or fixed up the vacant apartments. In fact, they've been left to deteriorate and cause a lot of problems for the tenants that are currently here. The building is just kind of neglected, even though it has 3 tenants living here. So this is a problem of warehousing that's going on throughout the city. The landlords are not renting vacant apartments for a variety of reasons.
Their landlord has been warehousing empty apartments for years.
Warehousing for almost 2 years.
Warehousing.
Apartment warehousing.
I say to the landlords who are warehousing your apartments, where is your sense of decency?
Given that this is such a crucial source of affordable housing, and also just the talk around building new affordable units, policymakers are talking in the tens of thousands year after year for what they're creating. So for there to be a gap of tens of thousands, does seem pretty significant to folks. So why are there so many vacancies in rent stabilized units? The answer is going to depend on who you ask.
Okay, so the apartments that aren't occupied are 1, which is right below this one. This is apartment 3, also unoccupied. And then apartment 6 is unoccupied.
Notice the stairs.
Yeah.
How,
And then the lighting. Yeah.
and then there's no light up here.
I was telling you about how they ripped out like the fire stopping from the vacant unit next door. When I say fire stopping, I mean insulation, right? They broke through the walls, took apart the walls, ripped out all of the insulation that was above this, right? And left just like a narrow like section of it, so that if anything would have caught on fire, it would have just immediately burned down this apartment. Like it's just incredibly dangerous. Yeah.
Ci sono le leak here. Whatever they use doesn't last long. It messes everything up. Just like the toilet we've been having, the leak. The same thing just keeps happening.
You want to do one day for 9 to 5 repairs, and then another one if needed?
And if
I mean,
they
it's
don't
just-
show up, for example, let us know.
Yeah.
Oh no, definitely.
Hay teléfono ya de los judíos.
Yeah,
Look.
is there a phone number for the landlord? That's the problem
I
here.
don't know. You keep emailing
Yeah.
people, but like who, did you get
No
a
one
response?
responds, no.
Estaba la temperatura a 30 grados y esa pared estaban derramando agua.
This was so damp, he said, when it was cold.
Really?
Yes,
was
yes,
damp.
you could see it.
Probably because the next door is empty and
Yeah.
part of the warehouse is higher.
A lot of folks have pointed to the idea that apartments are being intentionally kept off the market for profit. There's various examples as to why there'd be a financial incentive, whether that's they want to combine them and reset the rent, or they want to keep a tenant out and just hope that the rent laws change again in their favor.
You've had this building since when?
We built it in the late 40s.
Get out.
Yeah.
Your dad's dad?
Great granddad.
So this is 3 generations of Kurz.
It's 3. It should be 4, but we skipped a generation, interestingly enough. This was one of the first ones he built. After the war, after World War II, there was a lot of federal money out there.
Yeah.
They were basically giving you no interest loans and throwing cash at you to build housing.
Build it.
There was such a demand for it.
We should do that again. Since 2019, the rent laws have changed drastically to there is no incentive for a property owner who has the financial means to be able to invest tens of thousands, in many cases 100,000 or more, back into a unit when it becomes unoccupied after a long-term tenancy. So right now, there are affordable rent-stabilized apartments sitting vacant that need significant renovations.
There is this large landlord group called CHIP, Community Housing Improvement Program, and they have this narrative that the 2019 rent laws have created this vacancy issue and exacerbated it because it prevents them from making enough money to conduct repairs.
This is one of the units we have that's offline.
60.
The last tenant moved in 1978.
78, okay.
Legal rent is $834.58.
Wow.
It's a 1-bedroom. But we come into the apartment, we redo the floors, we replace the windows. This is a good example of an original kitchen.
Right.
They used the old metal base
Wow.
cabinets, which is interesting.
This is it's in surprising good shape since 78.
It's great shape. What we would do is we would break open this wall, we would put in new cabinets, new fixtures,
Energy efficient appliances.
energy efficient appliances. So a lot of our apartments have been renovated over the years. The rent laws changed in 2019. Prior to 2019, there was flexibility in allowing owners to make improvements and recoup the investment of those improvements in the rent. This entire bathroom would need to be renovated.
Right, because you don't know what the pipes will look like.
Yeah.
in the walls.
If I were to just put a coat of paint on it and rent it, I don't know if a tenant would rent it in its current condition, but there would be consequences associated with having to come back in 2 weeks if there was a problem. It would be like, buying a used car where you knew there was a problem with the engine. You wouldn't sell it to somebody knowing that there was a problem with the engine was going to blow up in 2 weeks. We'll have to make sure that this is all replaced. These walls will have to be scraped down and, built back up. It's a big process.
Right.
So, lead abatement alone could be $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 depending on the size of the apartment.
Right.
probably vinyl asbestos tile. So we'll need a special abatement company to come in.
You're adding another $10,000 to $15,000 just for this room.
Yeah. The electrical would be upgraded, and we'd probably add a dishwasher, right? Put in an amenity because people love dishwashers. You walk into an apartment like this, there's a checklist that you have to go through, making sure it complies with certain regulatory requirements, and it just didn't. So it's offline until we have a mechanism in the it shouldn't be a private property owner's responsibility to provide the affordable housing. I mean, that really should be on the job of
Well, even more specifically, even if Zach as an owner isn't subsidizing it, other renters are, because there is no subsidy for rent stabilization. There's a lot of distrust, and there were a lot of bad actors in this industry for a very long time. So the laws, I think, overcompensated in 2019.
Look, I'm in the business of renting apartments, right? I mean, that's what we do. That's the service I provide. So it's painful for me to leave this apartment off the market. But the cost associated with leaving it off the market is a lot less expensive than renovating the apartment and not collecting the return on that investment.
I remember their original campaign had about 4 or 5 on their website. I've seen probably about a dozen unique apartments on this. I think that these cases do exist, right? And some of these vacancies likely are due to the fact that there are massive renovations that need to be made and the landlord can't afford them. The big question here is, can that narrative be applied to tens of thousands of cases? And from the data that we've found, that seems very unlikely. There's no reason to believe that even the majority of these tens of thousands of vacant rent-stabilized apartments are in need of gut rehabilitation. What's complicated about the timing is the rent laws changed in June of 2019, and then COVID hit in March of 2020. And obviously we know so much of our society changed with COVID. The most recent number we have right now wasn't slated to be released to the public until the end of this year. We're now in 2023. But because of the buzz around our reporting, the state agency that administers that shared with us their preliminary account of how many vacant rent-stabilized units landlords have registered to date. And so far, it seems like we've now returned to the roughly 40,000 vacant apartments that were listed before the rent laws changed. The data would very much point to the 2019 rent laws, which are still in full effect to this day, not having a long-term impact on an existing issue of vacancies.
A lot of these landlords, what they really want to do is be able to sell this building, and then what they want to do is be able to sell the building either completely vacant, right, so that it can be torn down and re-raised as a non-stabilized building, or with as few people in it as possible so that they can substantially rehabilitate it and break it out of rent stabilization that way. If they can deliver the building vacant, that building could be worth millions and millions of dollars. With the tenancies, it's worth a few.
Yeseli tiene más de como 20 años que se fue de aquí. Claro, porque esta niña estaba chiquita.
Yeah, it's been like 15 years since somebody lived in an apartment.
No, más de 15.
Wait, was it?
20. Yo arreglé mi piso. Y el liqueo, la bañera tiene liqueo de agua.
Yeah. There have been tile problems for a while. There's a leak you can see that's just running right there. And because of this deterioration and the cracks around here and the running water, it now has roaches. It's harassment, right? Harassment through either giving like nuisance repairs, like repairs that break right away, they're just purely cosmetic, or by not doing repairs at all. It's meant to do one of two things, right? Either it's meant to so frustrate you that you stop asking for repairs, right? Or some landlords, they never want to actually make good, adequate repairs because that'll encourage you to stay.
Había muchas ratas también. Ratas que yo un día cogí 8 ahí en la cocina. Más los otros días me dio vergüenza que un compañerito del niño vino ahí adelante y el niño le preguntó, oh, ¿ese es tu house? Y dijo, oh, no, ese es mi house no es feo así. El nieto mío dijo así, imagínate. Claro que sí, que ellos están esperando que yo me vaya y esperando que nos vayamos todos para coger el edificio y destruirlo. Eso es lo que ellos quieren, que nos vayamos. Pero yo no me voy a ir.
The only way that the people who have been able to stay in these neighborhoods have been able to stay is because of these rent stabilized apartments, because of the protections of rent stabilization. If their landlords could have kicked them out, they would be gone. All of these communities would be completely gone. And a lot of them are almost gone.
Y así como está el building de feo, así se siente uno también, porque a uno le da como vergüenza vivir en un building así tan feo. Como está el building vacío, así estoy yo.